This episode is brought to you by Pro 16 Productions. Pro 16 Productions combines experience, passion, and innovation to capture the essence of your projects. Ma'ams and sirs, welcome to the Jarrett Bellmund Show. We are located here at the Center for Arts and Inspiration. My goal is to assist you in your personal and professional growth by talking to community leaders like our guest today, Nicole Lowry. Nicole Lowry is the Director of Operations at the Henderson County Chamber of Commerce. She graduated from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. She has worked as a project manager, PR coordinator, and community development manager. She's married to Brandon, who has a pretty solid beard, and is mother of Ellie, who she lovingly calls Squirrel. Welcome to the show, Nicole.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So we're going to talk about young professionals in Henderson County today, which I know is a dear spot in your heart and mine, especially over the last year as we've developed a program or organization here in
Henderson we'll call
County.
It an organization.
Yeah. So before we get started talking about young professionals, I want to ask you two quick questions.
Okay.
The first one is, what's the most influential book you've read in the last 6 months?
The most influential, within the last 6 months, it probably would have been Dare to Lead, which is Brené Brown's new leadership book. So it takes all of her ideas about vulnerability and all of that work that she does, and it applies it to leadership and work settings. And it's pretty transformative. It's pretty amazing. I'm a big fan of her work anyway.
Yeah.
So I was pretty inclined to like it in the first place.
Yeah, I actually heard this morning that Brené Brown's TED Talk has like 35,000 views.
She's amazing. Her work's amazing. So it was cool to see it applied at a work level.
That's awesome. Second question, something you've said no to in the last 6 months.
I don't know if I ever say no to much of anything. I did turn down the opportunity to get more involved through Ellie's school. There were some changes that happened there, and it was best for our family that we sort of stepped away and went toward the next venture. So yeah, I said no to that. That's growth.
It is. Well, and sometimes it's important to know what you're saying no to as much as what you're saying yes to. So that's great. And you were involved for a while with Ellie's school. So.
I was, yeah. So they've gone through some changes, and we had to somewhat tearfully, but for the best, go our separate ways. So.
Excellent. Well, let's talk about young professionals, which I guess Ellie will be eventually.
Eventually,
yeah, she's got a while. How old is she now?
She's 3.5.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she plays chamber work at home, which is fun to see because she's been with me at work a couple times. So excellent. She'll be a young professional.
Excellent. So let's just dig right in. Let's talk about the story of how young professionals of Henderson County has come under the umbrella of the chamber here. I know it's been just over a year. Mm-hmm. So could you maybe give some insight on how that came to be?
Yeah, so we were approached by the group of professionals in the community who ran it. It wasn't attached to any larger organization. They had some of the leadership age out, move on, and they were just ready to be able to participate and not necessarily put it together. So they came to myself and our president and asked if it was something we were interested as an organization in taking on. And it fit very much within the chamber mission of supporting business in Henderson County. And it was a board directive that we look into the option of doing a young professionals group. So it was sort of perfect timing, perfect transition time for both organizations. Yeah,
that's great. So what did it look like approaching a board that, in full transparency, I sit on the board. You attend all our meetings as an employee of the chamber. I believe we are the only young professionals in that boardroom. So what was it like going to a board that is not predominantly, is not at all a young professional group?
Well, I think on the surface level, there have definitely been jokes and jabs made about you're cutting it off at 40, we're not invited. But overall, the support's there just because organizations like young professional groups help bridge that generational gap in leadership that happens, and Henderson County sees it a lot just because there are so many nonprofit organizations. They're all looking to fill board seats. So it's a known issue in our community. So I don't think there was no twisting arms. Everyone was really supportive of it.
Yeah. So along with that mission of the chamber to use the young professionals, what really has been the mission of that young professional group? What have we I say we because I've been pretty involved in it. Could you expand on what has happened in the last year to develop that organization?
Yeah, so we started with this plan that we would do monthly meetings where everyone would get together and socialize at different breweries, and we would do, we called them pop-up social and skills. So the idea was they'd get hit with this quick infusion of a skill that they could then immediately start using in the workplace. And the response was great. The energy around it was great, but coming up with 12 small skill sets that we could then pass on to people was really difficult. So the first year was great in attendance, great in participation, and great in support, but structurally we decided we needed to sort of back off from the skills portion and just do monthly socials and give everybody an opportunity for low-key networking.
Yeah, so how, low-key networking, I like that. How is the networking at a young professionals event different than a ribbon cutting or, a normal after hours where honestly young professionals are not predominant at that event? So how does that networking differ between the two subgroups of people?
Well, it's a little different in that everyone at the young professionals is sort of cutting their teeth. So these aren't people who have been networking and building professional groups for 20, 30 years. They're fresh out of college, or they are just sort of getting their feet wet in the professional world. And it gives them, it's almost like a trial run. It gives them a place where they can sort of see what works for them and how they want to connect to people. It's also much less sales driven than some of the other networking groups because it is much more focused on building connections instead of furthering your portfolio.
That's very interesting. Yeah, the connections are so important at that young age. I know 7 years ago when I started networking here, seems like a long time ago, it's only 7 years. Those connections that I didn't have were detrimental to my success at that point. And I could definitely say that the connections I have now are a huge benefit to any success that I have. So these skills, what kind of skills did you guys go over last year? Are there anything?
So one of what I think the most fun one was actually our kickoff meeting. And what we did, there's a company called We and Me, and they have a product called We Connect cards. And I had experienced this at a young professionals group in another town where we passed out these cards. And the idea behind it is to sort of rethink how you network and how you connect to people. And it's built around taking social risks. And so it's asking people more personal questions. It can be everything from what's your biggest fear, which is a sort of a big level to have to answer to, what book impacted you most in the last 6 months. So it accounts for all levels, but it helps facilitate that actual connection building instead of just, here's my business card, let me verbally tell you all the information that's on it. So that was a really great opportunity. We also had Todd Gothberg, the staff development person with Advent Health Hendersonville. He came out and talked with us, and it was just, he was not a young professional, but he definitely related to young professionals in sort of how you have to prioritize your life and your work to line up to goals, not only professionally, but also personally. And it's just as important to set those personal goals as it is to set those professional goals. Yeah,
and I think that's a big benefit of an organization like the Young Professionals of Henderson County, in a county that is not youthful, we can say, is that there is a immense amount of knowledge to be gained. So let's talk about the generational gap, because Todd came in and was fabulous, right? Just very impactful, had a lot of powerful things to say, and I believe that the young professionals all walked away better for having him there. How do you think this organization is going to help close that generational gap? Because we've heard, the word millennial used in a negative tone, right? But then we have the okay boomer, and it's back and forth. So how does an organization like this work, and really how does the chamber work to close that generational gap?
Well, there's a few different ways, and one of them is that being involved with young professionals, or really any professional networking group, there's going to be events, there's going to be committees, and there's going to be ways that you can expand your own skill set as a professional. outside of what your 9 to 5 might offer you. So that's a benefit to your employee, but it's also a benefit to the community. Like I referenced earlier, Hendersonville and Henderson County, we have a wealth of nonprofits. All of those nonprofits have board seats to fill, and in a community where we're just developing the young professionals, a lot of those roles are filled by the same 100 people throughout the community, and they just rotate through them. So what happens when all those people retire? So setting up that skills pipeline for your community is really invaluable, because it gives you a way to help fill those leadership roles, add value to your companies, and add value to your community on the whole.
Yeah, I think that's a great way for young professionals to connect into the community, is getting on those nonprofit boards or any kind of organizational board. What do you think the some of the important outcomes of this Henderson County Young Professionals Group needs to be? So I know that one of the things that has been focused on over the last year was their connection with Leader in Me, or up and coming students that could get involved. How do you think the young professionals could work with Leader in Me to make both organizations successful in the future?
Well, I think a lot of it is awareness at this point in time. There's a lot of, and in most communities, there's sort of a lot of separation between what the schools are doing and what the businesses are doing, when in reality it's all workforce development, so it all leads into each other. So I think having our youngest professionals reach out to what will be the next generation of professionals and help bring them into the fold of the business community, get them more involved, get the business community out to the schools more, I think that's just going to benefit everybody involved. And again, it helps that generational gap. It helps keep those lines of communications open between all levels. So instead of having seminars on how to work with the next generation, businesses can just look at the next generation and say, hey, I saw you at this event. We're having trouble with this. What works? And for a chamber, we love connecting people. That's what we all live to do. And so when we can actually make those connections happen in an impactful way, we've succeeded.
Yeah, there's just as much benefit for the companies. So what, industries or type of professional are you seeing mostly engaged currently in the Young Professionals organization?
It's actually a pretty widespread. We have insurance agents, we have nonprofit professionals, but we also have banking industry represented. We have real estate is pretty well represented. I think what we as a group would like to see more of, and it sort of harkens back to how to get the schools more involved, is have more education professionals come out, have some service industry people there. I mean, you and I both have service industry backgrounds. There's a wealth of skills there that our business community leaves untapped if those people don't have a seat at this table.
Without a doubt. And I think that as much as the generational gap is impacted by having a young organization involved in a older organization's events, I think that within the organization alone, you have such a dynamic group of people and a huge age variance. I mean, I'm pushing that age limit coming up, but I feel like that not only am I gaining, but I'm able to give back, in almost a mentorship kind of way, where I have value to offer. And I think that would be one of the bigger benefits, would be to get some of these service industry, and which is huge in Henderson County. The education professionals, which is another top employer in Henderson County. So to get them out to these events, to connect them with the community, would be highly beneficial, in my opinion. So what is the best way for people to connect with this, get involved? You guys put on events. When are those?
So we did simplify it a lot for this year, because one of the things we noticed was in moving it around throughout the community, while it gave other businesses exposure, it also made it a little harder to keep up with where we were going to be. So we've moved it to the third Tuesday of the month, every month, from 5:30 to 7 at Dry Falls Brewing on Canoga Road. And that way, no pressure, just stop in, see what we're about, poke your head in. You can turn around and run if you want to, but it gives you the opportunity to sort of always know where to find us.
Yeah, that's great. That laid back casual, I feel like is good for the young professional, especially when you're not necessarily what an older generation would consider a professional. I mean, I consider whether you're a waitress or a retail worker or a teacher, we're all professionals. We're all doing a job. Right. We're showing up every day and doing it. And I think that there needs to be development there. What are some things that you would like to, characteristics that you would like to see developed in the young professionals in Henderson County?
I would really like to see sort of people start coming into their own as leaders. And I mean, the chamber involvement goes well beyond young professionals, and there's so many different ways you can get involved, and a lot of people just don't know how to get started. And so using the young professionals is a way to empower those people who do have skills, who do have time, who do have energy to give, I think, is a wonderful way to benefit both the community and those young professionals.
Yeah, I agree. So is there anything that I've missed on that from a chamber point of view, not that you're not important as an individual, Nicole, but that the chamber is really trying to push, and not push, but promote in having this young professional group? Is there something I missed on?
Well, I think one of the key sort of takeaways of a young professional group is that once you start one, you see more young professionals staying in your area. So Hendersonville, with it being directly located between Asheville and Greenville, South Carolina, there's a big exodus of young professionals to those other larger areas where they view they have more opportunity. But we have a lot to offer them here. And so keeping that talent in Hendersonville and Henderson County is always going to be in our best interest as a business community.
Yeah, that's excellent. And then obviously we have the community colleges and local colleges, and even the Henderson County schools, public schools, are super engaged in keeping those here and wanting to do some things. Well, Nicole, I appreciate you coming out. I'm going to give you an opportunity to kind of blast where people can contact the chamber, where they can contact you if they have any further questions about young professionals.
Yeah, so my email is nicole@hendersoncountychamber.org. My Nicole does not have an H in it, so Nicole. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Henderson County Chamber. So we're pretty easy to find.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And if you ever see a big group of people hanging out at some business in Hendersonville, it's probably us.
That's right.
Stop in, say hey, we love new faces. So.
Well, excellent. Well, again, I appreciate you coming on, and have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Jared Bellmund Show. Be sure to hit subscribe, ring the bell for future notifications, and check out the description for more information.